Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Monday, November 17th, 2025. And Carney was at the Grey Cup last night. I don't know who won. I think the Rough Riders were playing, but only because I remember them saying the Rough Riders won the coin toss. That's it. That's all I know. And that's only because I was watching video of Carney being booed. So Carney got booed savagely and repeatedly at the Grey Cup. And the media reported it as Carney was met with a mix of cheers and boos. So you don't hate the media enough, as if you didn't already know. Extortion crime on the rise in Canada, which is not surprising, but disappointing, right? We thought better of you, Canada, but here we are, disappointed. Everyone will have to reapply for SNAP benefits in the United States, so the government is reopened, but there are changes, and with the reopening of the government come changes, and everybody who was previously on SNAP benefits will have to reapply. So there's a lot of, it's interesting because again, it feels like a chess move. Like, okay, we'll open the government and we'll give you a year of funding, but also you're going to have to reapply. So, haha, take that. So we'll see what the next move looks like. Today's budget day. Will it pass? Of course it's going to pass. Yes, it's going to pass. Have you been paying attention? Holy smoke. If it doesn't pass, I will be shocked. I'll be not so upset or anything like that because it'll kill a lot of bad bills, but I'll be shit shocked if it doesn't pass today. Hopefully something happened over the weekend. Hopefully Pierre Poilievre was trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat and get enough people on board. But all the Liberals need is two people who ignore the whip or whatever it is, two people who vote with like two Bloc Québécois, whatever, two NDP. That's all they need. And so do you think that that's likely? I think it'll pass. So that's my call early on. We're already live streaming, so the budget hasn't been voted on, I guess, yet. But it's a confidence one. If it doesn't pass, then we're going to an election. But again, I would be absolutely shit shocked if we were going to an election because all the noise has basically been in the direction of the NDP is going to support this budget, and they've already done votes. They've already done confidence votes on Thursday and Friday that indicated the direction this was going to go. So don't be surprised when this terrible, awful budget passes with all of the terrible, awful things in it. And again, COVID happened and we said no. So it is again incumbent on us to say, hey, I don't think so. Nope. How about no? So there's lots to get to. One of the things that I got wrong, and I spoke with Joe yesterday, and Joe's a rancher out in Alberta, and he came on to Kitchen Table Talks before the Kitchen Table Talk, and I forgot to record the Kitchen Table Talk, so that's why I haven't posted the audio of the Kitchen Table Talk or anything like that. I haven't posted it on my website because I forgot to record it, and so I have to download it, and I have to do a bit of extra processing, so I'm going to try and get that out today, but we'll see. My fingers are crossed. Anyway, Joe came on before we recorded yesterday, before we went live. He said, that's okay, I don't actually want to be on the real show. I just want to tell you that you're wrong. And I was like, ooh, I love this. So he told me that I was wrong. So I have been conflating or mixing together cloned meat and lab-grown meat. And apparently, and apologies, I watched a video that said very clearly the cloned meat is extracting cells from a cow and then putting those cells in a petri dish and allowing it to grow and then putting it into a thing. I can't remember. I'm sorry. Incubator. And see, I told you I'd remember that one. And after it's in the incubator, then it's meat or something like that, or some reasonable facsimile of meat. And that is not what cloned animals are, according to Joe. And I asked Joe for some links, and he sent the links. So I apologize. The fundamental difference, and we talked about this on the Kitchen Table Talk. So if you watch the Kitchen Table Talk, I'm just going to go over this a little bit. But fundamentally, the cloned cow or the cloned animal is used to sire other animals, and that cloned animal wouldn't be slaughtered for meat. It's too expensive to do that. You use their progeny as and I said, what do consumers care? A hamburger's a hamburger regardless of the beef, the genetic structure of the cow. The best cow or the worst cow, it's still a delicious hamburger. It's kind of hard to F up a pizza, right? And so like the argument on Kitchen Table Talk was fundamentally that the bull is better, so yields more. So most bulls have enough sperm in a season for 30 cows. This one will have 50 cows because of its superior genetics. Like, look at this thing go, right? Or it's healthier for longer or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's plausible. So it's the benefits on the farmer side, not necessarily the consumer side for delicious animals, just more animals, cheaper investment, more animal yield. Everybody's happy or something like that. And cloned animals are born And I said, I have less of a problem with it so long as it's not grown in a lab. If it's born, so they basically IVF, so they fertilize the egg using the same kind of fertilization technology that they use on a human. And then they implant the egg in a female cow. Any female cow will do. You don't have to have superior genetics in the female cow. And so the female cow, any female cow, grows the superior genetic cow. And then you use that cow to sire other cows. And bingo, bango, bongo, you've made a lot of money? I guess. He says it's like that's totally how it works. And I was like, all right, man, that sounds good. And he was very genuine, and I appreciated his time, and I appreciate being read in. I'm sorry that I got it wrong. But it's difficult to know, and it's not very clear. Like, it's really not very clear. And the video I saw, well, I mean, it was one video, I suppose, so I should have done a bit more research. But it's one of those things where it's not very clear. Health Canada is not being very clear, and that's part of the problem. So apologies for getting it wrong. I've got a couple of meat stories, so we're going to start there, but the budget is the real story today, but we've got to go through this because I got it wrong. So Lisa is a counselor in Pickering, and she says, cloned meat is now hidden in Canada's food supply. No labels, no warning. Our food supply has changed forever. Canada quietly changed the rules, and I've got the Government of Canada website link here to explain further. They quietly changed the rules, and now cloned beef and can legally hit our shelves with no labels, no warnings, and zero public notice. Health Canada erased oversight. The CFIA can't demand disclosure, and Canadians have been left completely in the dark. This isn't fear-mongering, it's policy. And once you hear what really happened, you'll understand why so many are calling this a betrayal. Some say it's already on the shelves as of a couple of weeks ago. Watch to the end. You need to hear this. So I actually haven't listened to this, so apologies about that. But it was just a good launching off point. And she's talking about it, and everybody's talking about it. And again, I think the conversation is fraught because of the lack of information forthcoming from the government, the lack of good information forthcoming from the government, and the lack of good information just kind of around from people in the know, right? Including me. So like Government of Canada says, here's this. This is what Joe sent. This is from March 26, 2024, and it was going to end in May 25th, 2024. So this is information, and this is for the type of cloning that they're talking about and that Joe was talking about. He says, share your thoughts. Food derived from somatic cell nuclear transfer clones and their offspring policy update, closed consultation. So the current status is closed. Health Canada's Food and Nutrition Directorate is proposing to publish a revised policy regarding the regulation of foods derived from somatic cell nuclear transfer, cloned cattle and swine, and their offspring as novel foods in Canada. So they clone these things, and then those cloned cattle and swine are not themselves slaughtered, but their offspring are used and not labeled as novel foods. So they're just regular. So the cows and swine, pigs that are born from pairings with this cloned animal are not novel foods. They're just regular everyday foods from regular everyday cloned bulls and stuff and pigs and stuff. That's it. And I feel more comfortable than lab-grown meat. But are they the same thing? Do we have any kind of long-term data? If you eat cloned meat, is that going to impact you in any negative way? Is there any fundamental difference between the cloned meat and the non-cloned meat? And do we know for sure? Right? Again, lack of information. I don't know. But it's way better than being put into an incubator. That's for darn sure. Right? So the revised policy proposes these foods no longer be considered as novel foods, subject to pre-market notification division under Division 28. Part B of the Food and Drug Regulations. Comments were received here. The directorate will consider all the science-based comments concerning food safety before making a final decision. Who is the focus of the consultation? Regulated parties, interested stakeholders, general public. And then here's some related information. Somatic cell nuclear transfer. Animal cloning is the process of creating an animal that's a twin of the original animal. SCNT is a reproductive animal cloning technique and doesn't change the animal's genetic makeup. The process involves taking the nucleus of an unfertilized egg cell from a female animal, the egg donor, and replacing it with the nucleus of a somatic, any cell except sperm and egg, cell from another animal to form an embryo. The embryo is then transferred to a surrogate to continue to develop until birth. Livestock breeders use cloning to create copies of animals with desirable traits such as disease resistance or milk or meat quality, currently under the Canada Environmental Protection. So they're saying this is consumer based. The milk or meat quality is better, and so the consumer will be happier, and the quality of my product is better, and therefore I want to clone this guy. This guy's meat's the best meat, right? Currently under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, SCNT animal clones and their offspring are considered as new living organisms. Therefore, they're subject to pre-manufacture and import assessment requirements under the new substance notification regulations. However, Environment and Climate Change Canada and Health Canada's Environment and Consumer Safety Branch are reviewing this to propose amendments. These amendments may include the possibility of exempting SCNT cattle and swine clones. They're doing this review at the same time as Health Canada's policy update, but it's a separate process. So it changes the math for me, but at the same time, I think the way they're doing it is underhanded and weird. I think if they came to the public and presented things in a more clear way, even that way, in a more accessible, more front and center kind of way, would have been better than what's being done. So, my gosh. Anyway, regardless, we carry on. So let's talk about the budget and how the budget is rolling out today. It is being voted on, and TR6 Amigo says, what is being hidden in the Canada Strong Budget 25 that's being voted on today in the House of Commons? If 2 MPs from any of the opposition parties vote with the Liberals, this budget will pass and the Liberals will stay in power. Here's what they're not telling you about that is in this budget. Digital ID. All your elbow ups boomers that voted for the WEF, UN globalist Carney, you will need digital ID to get your old age security. Are your elbows still up? So Liberal budget quietly pushes for new digital ID system. Yes, they're bringing this in, right? Like, this is not a joke. This is absolutely happening, and they're going to take your access to all your money, all of your benefits if you don't sign up for the government handouts. That's what they're going to do. And then they're going to come for your regular money too. They're going to say all of the money that you spend has to be in these credits. And also, if you don't have this injection, you can't have any credits at all. So, but all of the money that you spend has to be in these credits. And this is coming. I hope I'm wrong. I super duper hope I'm wrong. Terry says Carney's second round of already existing major projects. So Sharon says Canada announcing a second round of major projects in 6 months is a clear signal we're finally acting like a country open for business. She says a mine or LNG project may not be flashy, but they mean progress, less red tape, and more confidence. She's so confident that nobody's allowed to reply. She's like, yeah, our government's doing stuff and blah, 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 but nobody's allowed to reply to this. I'm very confident after seeing the structure of this. So all of the announcements as well are of projects that have already been announced. So I would say it's like not so good. We're being manipulated in order to stay on board with what's being rolled out, right? Regardless of whether we support it or not. And a lot of people don't support it. Joe is responding to Roman Baber. And Roman Baber is highlighting this 40-second CTV news clip. Mark Carney's 25-26 deficit will cost your family $5,400 in additional debt. Meanwhile, Mark Carney's cronies will get $1 trillion in new green scams. If you look at the track record of the last 5 years, Bayless with the ventilators and hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts, there's all sorts of other examples of liberal cronyism, some well-known, some not so well-known. $600 million of missing receipts from Catherine McKenna. There was $900,000. I think it was $900,000. It was a ridiculous amount of money. I can't remember how much money exactly. But the liberal House leader was the leader for 9 days, and she spent a crap ton of money, and then she was removed. And I missed this story until it's kind of old now, so I'm just kind of mentioning it as an aside. But like, what? There's all sorts of crony scams that have money flowing to insiders that we know about and don't know about. And I can't think of one instance that anybody's been held accountable in the last 5 years or in the last 20 years, really. After the gas plant, there was the gas plant was scrapped. Dalton McGuinty stepped down. Somebody went to jail. And then there was Ben Levin. He went to jail. And then that's it. Like, that's the only two I can think of, and it had very little to do with the structural rot and crony politics that we see everywhere. Anyway, here's a lot of money in our budget, and I don't think we're getting any bang for the buck here. We're barely staying afloat in Canada, and I think that's part and parcel of the plan, that we don't stay afloat. Here's this clip.
Today, the federal government outlined its new climate competitiveness strategy as global trade upheavals, rapid technological change, and clean energy is reshaping the world economy. Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Julie DeBrusen, and Energy Minister Tim Hodgson announced today the government will invest over $1 trillion over the next 5 years, driving growth in nuclear, hydro, wind, energy storage, and grid infrastructure to make Canada a leader in the low-carbon economy.
It prioritizes measures that deliver the greatest emissions reductions and increases competitiveness at the lowest cost for Canadians.
Climate change is a hoax that is used to steal our money in the form of taxes. And that is terrible. Here is Fiscal Anchors. Who needs fiscal anchors? And here is Jason Jacques. She says his name better than I'm saying his name. And it's absolutely damning. What he says in this 2-minute clip is damning. There's no way this thing should pass. We should be going to an election. But you know what's going to happen. So here's this. Prepare to be angry. Here we go.
Jason Jakes is the interim parliamentary budget officer. I wanted to start off on the second point. What is it that you see as overly expansive, and how impactful is it that it is?
From our perspective, we think that the definition the government's used around capital investments is overly expansive. And in particular, they've thrown some things in there, some categories of spending, which other jurisdictions in other countries would not typically include. And of course, the biggest risk with all of this is if you're not spending on productive capital investments, if you have an overly broad definition, then you're not going to get the investment impact and the growth in the economy that the government expects.
What about fiscal anchors? They've obviously changed from what they promised to be the fiscal anchor, debt to GDP, and the platform to deficit to GDP. What do you see there?
The debt to GDP ratio is the most important medium-term indicator of fiscal sustainability. The government has cut that anchor. At the same time, the way in which the government went about this was certainly not transparent. So we've had this fiscal anchor for over 30 years. It's something that the Liberal Party of Canada campaigned on in 2025 in April. It was in their platform. And without any discussion whatsoever, this fiscal anchor was eliminated. It's important to remember that this is very different than what we've seen over the past 30 years. The definition of sustainability is your debt to GDP ratio is stable or declining over time.
Do you still think the fiscal situation here is unsustainable?
I think the current fiscal situation, we moved into new territory. Now we're in a situation where the government makes no pretense about having a stable or declining debt to GDP ratio. And that,
do you think that's true? Pardon the interruption.
Oh,
do you think that's true?
During the 2025 election campaign, all major political parties identified a declining debt to GDP ratio as being the most important fiscal anchor. All of a sudden in the budget, that anchor that we've had for 30 years, the most important fiscal anchor, is gone without any discussion whatsoever. And now we're in new territory where potentially we're going to be borrowing substantially more money the next time that there's an economic shock.
So we're in a bad situation. It's like having high credit card debt and then saying the plan, if things go sideways, is credit card city, baby. Deficit spending on the credit card, 30% debts or 30% interest. Who cares? It's fine. We'll just keep spending. And that's what we're doing, right? The cost to service our debt, which is the amount of money you have to pay in interest, is going up from $56 billion to $76 billion or something to that effect by 2030. And like, that $25 billion could go to services, but it's not going to because we owe too much money and we're being stupid about our spending. And nobody seems to be able to stop it. So nobody likes Mark Carney and everybody's booing him. As soon as he goes on the screen, they started booing him and they cut away from him. I don't know if they plan to cut away from him, but they cut away from him as soon as the boo started. Here is just a couple of clips from the Grey Cup last night.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, can God keep.
And there are other clips as well of him being booed in different circumstances. Marty up north says Carney got booed every time his name was mentioned. And yeah, here is more boos.
Joining the team captains is the Prime Minister of Canada, le Premier Ministre du Canada, Mark Carney, and the CEO of Coinbase Canada, Lucas Matheson.
Mr. Prime Minister, would you do us the honor? Tails has been called. This is a tails. Saskatchewan has won the toss.
There you go. See, that's the only reason I know why Saskatchewan is in this. I don't know what the score was. I don't know anything about it. Table Salt shares this, and Francois Philippe Champagne and Mark Carney are having this exact conversation right now. And it's Smithers and Mr. Burns saying, "Are they saying boo? No, sir. It's boo earns, boo earns." The title of today's show is almost Boo Earns, but I thought it was a little bit too up my own nose, so that's unfortunate. But Senator Denise Batters says, "I don't think I heard any cheers, CTV News, just a lot of booing." CTV News reports, Prime Minister Carney met with cheers and boos at the 112th Grey Cup game. LOL. Cheers. Oh, yes, lots of boo earns, sir. It was boo earns. Right, sure. Andrew Shear says, not sure why Carney is allowed on the field during the Grey Cup anthem. Offensively, he hasn't scored a single point after promising to get a win by the end of July. Defensively, several other countries have run up their tariff score on his watch. With his record, why would either team want him anywhere near the playing field? Right, well, Carney he's just running around doing photo ops, trying to paper over the terrible job and zero results that he's gotten, and the declining living standard and further scandals that, again, keep plaguing this government. But the elections are rigged, so it's not like they're worried about it, right? They just keep showing up, pretending that they're popular, and then people tell them where to go, and they pretend like it doesn't happen. Western Standard, let's talk about money and our grab bag of governance. We've got to say goodbye to the stream really soon as well, so sorry about that, everyone. Western Standard says auditors say Ottawa can't show results from $60 million UN subsidy program. If we've got a $60 million thing that can't pass an audit, why is the government in charge of the budget? We should have triggers where if audits start getting failed, that triggers third-party forensic audits, open books policy or something to that effect. Like, okay, you guys are screwing this up and we need everybody to have a look. So everybody in Canada has access to all of your books, and we're going to find out where the problem is and we're going to fix it. Right? Like, I feel like there is no protection for taxpayers, and the taxpayer, the other day I was making the point that in 1913, the Fed was created to loan money to the government, and this gave them access to money in the future. Why did it give them access to money in the future? So taxpayer dollars in the future, because of the debt service cost on the debt, right? So like paying it back. When you take $1 billion debt, that $1 billion is tax dollars 10 years into the future, like getting a mortgage, right? Like you get $100,000 mortgage or a $500,000 mortgage. You are promising that money in the future, right? And so they got us over a barrel when they were allowing governments to take loans with interest, and that debt service cost is like a hostage ransom. And like they like it, so we're just going to keep paying it every year, right? It's so crazy, and we shouldn't have to do it. There was a structure which was in place previously and worked pretty well, I guess. That didn't have the boom and bust cycle that we see, that work that we could put in place, that where countries were able to borrow money from themselves interest free, and so we don't do that anymore. And again, I'm not a money guy, so I'm just lamenting the loss of something that seemed to work. It's like having a food system that works, moving to a food system that doesn't work, and we pretend that we don't know why or how to fix it, when really we could just do what used to work instead, right? But we, as a political force, are being manipulated, and we are more powerful than we think, but we don't wield that power because we don't know how, fundamentally. In the face of the climate we're in, we don't know how to wield it against these people who have taken over and perverted the institutions that are supposed to be on the side of the citizen, be on the side of the balancing of democracy. You know what I mean? You can't, if you're a political party like One BC or like People's Party, these parties come up and they try and put billboards up, and they're not allowed to advertise because they say, oh, that's hateful. You're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do certain things because the government claims that's against our better judgment or whatever. But that's a political question, and the government shouldn't be stopping those conversations, but they do. And so we are ineffective in addressing the actual game we're playing.